An unknown scientist was about to make a discovery that could have changed everything. His name was Winifred Otto Schumann. On the day in question, he was teaching his students about the physics of electricity, how the Earth and the ionosphere is a sphere within a sphere, which can create electrical tension and subsequently a frequency. Schumann instructed his class to calculate the tension that would exist in between. Having no idea himself, Schumann also began to calculate. Eventually, he arrived at a frequency, one of approximately 10 Hertz. As incredible as it seemed to Schumann, our planet had a pulse, a measurable frequency that surrounded life on Earth. Although the professor was proud of his find, he did not see it as a hugely significant one. It would take several years and an incredible twist of fate before the professor would begin to realize the true importance of Schumann resonance. That twist of fate had begun 30 years earlier with another German scientist by the name of Hans Berger. Using an EEG machine he had built himself, Berger made the first ever recording of electrical frequency transmitted by the human brain. It was initially suggested the wave be named after the man who discovered it, but Berger, being a modest man, called it the alpha wave. Dr. Ankermüller, another German scientist, put two and two together and instantly realized the magnitude of what was in front of him. The frequency of the alpha waves recorded by Hans Berger were nearly identical to Schumann resonance, the frequency of the Earth. Dr. Ankermüller immediately contacted Schumann to further investigate. They studied in detail how tension is discharged by lightning in the Earth's ionospheric cavity. Eventually, they came up with an exact frequency. The pulse of the Earth, Schumann resonance, was exactly 7.83 Hertz. The discovery was remarkable. Schumann resonance was not just similar to the alpha waves of the human brain, it was identical. The brain's frequency, which controls our creativity, our performance, our stress, our anxiety, and our immune system, had somehow tuned in to the frequency of the planet. The pulse of the Earth had become the pulse of life itself. So what did all this mean? It was not long before somebody tried to find out. His name was Rutger Weaver, an acclaimed scientist from the Max Planck Institute. In the early 1960s, the professor constructed an underground bunker in order to examine the circadian rhythm of man. The circadian rhythm is the day-night cycle, which is engraved into all life. Over a 30-year period, the professor conducted experiments in which student volunteers would spend several weeks at a time living in the bunker, completely shielded from the natural resonances of the Earth. In his results, Weaver noted some astonishing findings. He discovered that when Schumann resonance was filtered out of the bunker, the students' physical and mental health suffered severely. Weaver would secretly introduce the 7.83 Hertz frequency into the bunker using an electromagnetic pulse generator. Every time he did so, he noted the ill effects suffered by the volunteers either disappeared or decreased. Their headaches and emotional distress was reduced, and their sense of well-being was restored, all by the introduction of Schumann resonance. Weaver's research had revealed an incredible connection between human health and the natural frequency of the planet. And in 2011, groundbreaking research suggested something even more impressive: that Schumann resonance can be connected to the beginning of life itself. The breakthrough came at the hands of Luc Montagnier, the Nobel Prize-winning scientist who first discovered the HIV virus. The professor was conducting water memory experiments when he stumbled upon something that would shake one of the very core principles of science. All life comes from life. That was a fundamental principle of science that had never been violated. It was thought that life could only exist where life had existed before, and the mechanism for this was always understood to be a material one, such as egg and sperm, or spore and cell division. But Luke's experiments offered a very different hypothesis. DNA sequences, the very building blocks of life, communicate with each other in water by emitting low-frequency electromagnetic waves. Even when the DNA was in separate test tubes, the professor still recorded electromagnetic communication between them. Communication so sophisticated as to form nucleotides, the very ingredient for life itself. Scientists have attempted similar experiments countless times before. How had Luke managed to achieve what no other scientist could, and create life where no life was present? What was so different about Luke's experiment? There was the presence of a frequency which when removed would cause the experiment to fail, but when present would ensure its success. That frequency was 7.83 Hz, the Schumann Resonance. How did all this happen? Well, when you look at the history of the Earth, it seems pretty obvious. Schumann waves have been part of this planet since the very beginning. Life is surrounded by them, and inevitably tuned in. Does it stand to reason that such an acute sensitivity would be affected by even the smallest change in the electromagnetic environment?